I will call, thank you. I'll call this Board of Selectmen special meeting for Wednesday, June 26th. I will call it to order at 5:05. And first item of our agenda this evening is board and commission appointments. There are a number of boards. I will say that if everyone is in agreement, I will table the fire commission meeting, the fire commission appointment at this point in time, until our regular meeting on the 10th. With that, the first item up is a building board of appeals, and we have a candidate for that for nomination.
Yes, I'll make a motion to appoint Anita Ingram to the Building Board of Appeals for a 4-year term commencing January 1, 2024 and ending December 31st, 2027.
Second.
Is there any discussion, any questions?
I just had a question because I remember when we were doing the appointments earlier, this is a board that requires certain professional expertise. So this is someone
Yes.
with that expertise?
Correct.
I saw the resume. I wasn't
Right.
sure what constitutes the expertise that we need for a building, but
Well,
it seemed like
we
there's
did
some
confirm
background.
that.
Yeah?
Yeah, we confirmed it with.
Okay, great.
Thank you. Any other questions? Hold the vote. All in favor? It's unanimous. Next nomination is for Coopop.
I'll make a motion to appoint Daniel Rakuya, thank you, for the Commission on the Use of Publicly Owned Property to fill a vacant 4-year term ending December 31st, 2025.
Second.
Any questions, comments?
And this is the term that Javier Aviles was in?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Correct. No more questions? All in favor? No opposed, no abstentions, motion carries. The next is for the economic development, before I go further, COOPOP is the Commission of Use of Publicly Owned Properties, just so folks know that. And the next is our EDC, or Economic Development Commission.
I'll make the motion to appoint Sherry Fitzgerald to the Economic Development Commission for a 4-year term commencing January 1, 2024 and ending December 31, 2027.
I'll second that. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Thank you. Motion carries. And Allison, or someone let me know if Maria does come on here.
I
so
know,
we
I'll
include her.
keep looking, and I have it open here
Thank
to
you.
see if she calls in.
The next is the Housing Committee. We have one.
Yes, I'll make the motion to appoint Chris Dickerson to the Housing Committee. Term on, yeah, thank.
Second.
What's the term, Steve? I'm sorry.
I actually don't have the term date in front of me. This is for,
They don't have,
Did that have
So
terms?
housing
Oh, no,
committee
they don't
doesn't
have
have a
terms.
term
Yeah,
date,
so
it's
that's
ad hoc, that's
Thank you.
why, so.
Thank you.
I actually think it's October of this year,
Because of the charge.
the way it was charged, yeah. Yeah, so we should probably look at that because we should stagger them.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
But for now,
if you don't mind making a note on that, that's important. Thank you.
I think we have that for ordinance to look at as well.
Yeah.
Yep.
excellent.
Yeah.
All right. Any discussion? All in favor of Mr. Dickerson? Motion carries. We have an opening for the Library Commission.
So I'll make the motion to appoint Mary Hill to the Library Commission, and that's for a term ending December 31st, 2027.
Well, second.
Any discussion? Questions? All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you. We have two town official appointments that we would like to make. The first being the Assistant Town Clerk, Brooke Hopkins. It's a recent hire.
I'll make that motion to appoint Brooke Hopkins as Assistant Town Clerk for a 4-year term commencing January 1, 2024, ending December 31, 2027.
I'll second.
Any questions?
Is there also like a Assistant Registrar of Vital Statistics that automatically goes along, or would that be a separate? I think they usually both hold those.
The same person holds both, is that what you're saying?
Usually, but we could always do that at a later date. We can't
It's
do it
a,
tonight.
yeah, no, it's a separate, the Stephanie needs, those get sent somewhere else, and so we haven't, cause that's gonna get moved around again based on
because of the-
some of the other recommendations.
Town clerk is looking
Yeah,
to reorganize versus.
Right, she's coming back to personnel in December, so
So,
we'll catch
Okay.
her there.
That's right, and then that gets filed somewhere with the state. Register of Vital Statistics is different than our
Yeah.
assistant temporary.
We need all the help we need.
okay, any other questions? All in favor? Motion carries. The assistant tax collector was brought to my attention that this is something that should have been if it was, even if she was approved by the previous board, we would still need to approve her from our perspective after January. We didn't do it in January specifically because we weren't certain at that point in time, so this is really just to complete that process.
So I'll make that motion to appoint Assistant Tax Collector Carol Salone as the Assistant Tax Collector for a 4-year term commencing January 1, 2024, ending December 31, 2027.
Second.
Any questions? All in favor? Thank you. Our next item is the resolution for the VAR grant. What I'll do is, I believe
Dale's on the way.
Dale Krupp is joining us this afternoon. Dale Krupp is our Rex consultant who's helping with our EDC. He was instrumental in assisting us with this grant as well. So what I'll do is, Dale, rather than me trying to, anyway, he's not there now.
He was right there.
Yep, I just saw him a moment ago, but I don't see him now. But the bar grant is the grant that we were looking to use for planning purposes at the country club. The amount of the bar grant was $132,000. I believe you have some of that, you have that information in your packet. And this is a planning grant. And it's very specific to, not, in addition to planning, it includes some remediation assessment, some legal work, and basically it's divided into a couple of different categories, adding up to the $132,000, $15,000 that the town needed to commit to this as well, for a total of $147,000 for what we need there. A couple of things I'll say, and there have been some notifications and some indication as to that specifies or indicates specifically that this is a grant for housing development on the country club or something along those lines, and I wanted to clarify that that's not the case. This is a planning grant, and maybe Dale, do you want to comment any more in regards to what we are here, if you can hear us? Or are you on mute? Okay, so to continue on, this is a planning grant, and I did contact the director of DECD who approved the grants, or who administer the grants, just to clarify and be absolutely certain that there's no misunderstanding, because I certainly don't want to represent we're going to do something with the money that we're not going to do, and advise her that there's no indication that we will put there's no definitive that the housing is what we're doing in reality. How are you, Dale? We can hear you now.
Okay, I'm sorry, I had a lot of trouble connecting with WebEx. I'm not used to WebEx. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you fine.
Yes.
We can hear you fine. I'll just finish up. I was just saying how I did reach out to Binu Shanti, who is the director of the ECD, just to explain
Yep.
exactly what we were going to use the grant for, and that it is a planning grant for us to assess what we want to do with the property, and that might include no development. It should that be the decision that we come up. And she understood, agreed, and said if we'd like to change any of the language, she's obviously willing. This is a planning grant. That's what this is for. It does include some
Yeah.
remediation, which Dale, I'll let you get into a little bit. But I did want to, that said, obviously that certainly is an option as to what can happen on the country club. So it's, but they understand fully that there is no intent or there's no commitment on our part that using this money means we need to do something with housing on the country club. So I wanted to make sure that was clear and everyone understands that that's the case. Now, Dale, I'll turn it over to you to give us a little
Yes.
bit more information on the grant.
Okay, so let me, please put your hand up if you can't hear me. I'm assuming you can hear me.
We can hear you
So,
very
yes,
well.
Okay, so I'm assuming you can hear me, okay. So nothing has changed with regard to the scope that was proposed in the grant. The resolution is the exact same resolution that was passed before. Sometimes when the DECD lets out, it takes the grant in and then they award it, sometimes the town will change it, but in this case, that is not the case. Just a quick reading of the topics within the grant. There's going, as Mika said, this is to evaluate the potential uses of the site. There will be an infrastructure analysis of the roads and utilities and so forth. There'll be a cost-benefit analysis of different types of uses, which is a really important part of the grant. There'll be a market analysis and a market demand study to show where there's a need for whatever happens to be there, and that includes open space and other uses. There'll be a community participation process in coordination with different groups within the community. All of this was explained when we first went in for the grant. There'll be a conceptual design, which will come later in the process once the community has weighed in on the types of things that they'd be interested in. There'll be some cost estimates, which will involve the phase 1 site assessment. There will not be cleanup as a result of this grant. It's just going to be an evaluation. You've done some of that work already, I remember, on some of the site, but they need, because this is comes from a brownfield program, you have to do at least a phase 1 site assessment. There'll be a legal analysis of the liabilities, depending on where the town wants to go, and that usually costs money. And then there'll be, as I said, an updated phase 1 and some sort of an action plan. So basically, it's what Mika described. It's just an evaluation on the best possible uses and the implications, since the town does own the property. And that's pretty much it. Anything after that would be other grants potentially. And but the whole point of a bar grant is to take a look at an important project in town and look at the different elements to see what's the best use. That's what I got.
Any questions?
Thank you, Dale. So this is strictly analysis, not action, right?
This is evaluation and planning, correct? Correct.
That's what I was
That's
hearing you
correct.
both say. I just wanted to be sure I'm hearing it right.
Yes.
It is, and just to be clear, there's $110,000, I believe, in this, and Dale, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe $110,000, which is earmarked specifically for planning, which can be used for the master planning consultants that we're evaluating.
Looks like
Yeah, I
160.
thought that was-
Right, and then the rest
The
of it was going to be
7,000
for any kind of environmental assessments that are required.
And I say 110 because there was they indicated that there could be a $7,000 legal fee associated with, legal fees associated with.
Yeah, that's the other thing that changed. When we first applied, it was unclear whether we had to pay for the states. Normally, when you get a grant for certain levels, you have to pay, believe it or not, their lawyer to review their document, which sounds crazy, but it is a rule. But anyway, yesterday on the call, we clarified that this will not have to happen, so we could reprogram that money back into planning.
So with that, I'll ask for, in the certified resolution, I believe you had a copy in your package. It's just indicating that we did indeed take a vote, and our board agrees that we should move forward with the resolution.
And do you have an idea how, I know that when you originally envisioned this grant, that it was going to help us with the consultant.
Yes.
Do you have an idea how you might apportion the budget, or who's going to do the budgeting of the pieces of the grant? Is that something that staff does?
Go ahead, Dale. I'll let you
Right,
start.
can I just chime in on that a little bit? It's a good question because there's many components of the grant. I will be assisting the town under my contract with just sort of guiding within the rules of the state. But what will happen is we have a general budget, but we're going to have to put out for RFP or bid the many elements of it. And so, for example, for the environmental assessment, there's a state on-call list that she pointed out yesterday, and we would go to that list and get the best price. So there are going to be several different potential vendors working on this. They would be coordinated through Mika's office, obviously, but I will be assisting. I've worked on probably 15 of these kinds of grants, so, and we have the guidelines already on how to do bids and RFPs.
Dale, the one thing I'll just add to that and correct you as far as what you're saying is the master planning groups, the master planning firms that we're looking at right now have the capability to address all of the different components outlined in the grant. So they do market analysis, they do, and we just asked them, I just asked them today if they can also add the remediation assessment part of that. One of them responded that they could, one of them will respond tomorrow whether or not they could also. I also confirmed with the director at DECD that we could, if they have the capability, could we use the consultant we're using and have them bring in someone with the expertise to do this? And Benu indicated that we could, Dale, and I don't know that you realized that. But that was a conversation I had with her last
Yeah,
night. as
no,
a
no,
matter
I
of
didn't know you, I didn't know you spoke to her, but yeah,
Yes.
that's true. And then, we just have to look at how those master planners were procured in the first place.
Correct.
Sounds like
Now,
it'll be
what I
okay.
do need to do as part of this, just, full disclosure, is I need to send to the state, send to DECD, the process that we followed, the RFP that we put out for these two consultants, and the process we followed to select the two consultants.
Okay.
It helps us actually, it appears to help us actually that we haven't made a selection as yet, because otherwise we might have had gone out to
Right.
bid. But as long as we've gone through the process, which is part of what we do as a municipality, as long as we follow that process, we should be fine. But I do need to send them an email outlining that, what we've done, so that they can agree that it's acceptable.
Well, this seems like a great
Correct.
result. Well, I know it's a lot of hard work.
It's,
Thank you guys for
yeah, we're-
dotting all the i's and crossing the t's, because it sounds like there's been a lot of back and forth.
And interestingly enough, and this is something Tony's been trying to drill into me, getting the grant is when a lot of the work starts also. So there's a lot of administration that goes along with this at this point in time that we have to take care of.
Yeah.
So, but it's, we're pleased, we're very pleased with that.
Do we also have a sense of if there's a time period by which previous reports can be used? Because there was, if Tony Genovese was here, I'm sure he could tell us what phase environmental remediation study. There definitely was some previous
There
document,
was.
but it's more than a decade old, and
We've discussed that, and that assessment that was done was not done in the area where we would need to have it done at this point in time, and did not include the clubhouse. So, and we're hopeful that this may include the clubhouse, which would be certainly very helpful.
Yeah.
But it also, at the time that they did the previous remediation, and they did phase two, I mean, they went, I think they might have been done more than that.
They
yeah.
did a phase 3.
Say phase three, thank you.
Yeah.
They did not do phase one in the area, this is the only area that's left really from what we've looked at on the records, is the area where they used to, not where they stored hazardous, but where they kind of, like where they loaded
where the machinery
the
was.
machinery,
Yeah,
right, where they
that's
loaded the
correct.
machinery, so that needs to be looked at again, but
And I
we
thought
can
we were-
ask if there's anything that we've done in the past that we have,
Yeah,
as long as if it's in the same area, we should be okay, but not if it's not in that area.
because I thought we were carrying like $1 million in the capital budget, and we were just pushing it forward to not funding it, but putting it on the radar to say, at some point, there was a dollar amount associated with the cleanup.
I don't know if that's taken out of the budget, I haven't seen it in the
Maybe.
budget, and I know that, I know Tony and I have had this
These are
discussion.
Tony questions, so
Yeah,
we'll
I
get
know
them
we've
when
had
you-
this discussion a number of times. I would have thought he would have brought that up, and he might have not thought of it along those lines, so that's
Maybe drop
worth
back out.
asking out for us to ask him, Allison.
Yeah, and maybe that the Newman report on the building itself, the clubhouse building, that definitely had remediation. Maybe they were just estimates, though.
Yeah.
Interesting, but yeah, if we can build on all of that.
So we will need a motion to authorize the signing and submission of the resolution.
So I'll make that motion. Oh, you're-
So moved.
Perfect.
So the motion is to approve the filing of an application not to exceed $132,000 in order to undertake the former Woodbridge Country Club bar planning project, and to adopt the resolution authorizing First Selectman Mika Cardozo to execute and file such application with the Connecticut Department of Economic and Community Development, to provide such information, to execute such other documents as may be required, to execute an assistance agreement with the state of Connecticut for state financial assistance if such an agreement is offered, to execute any amendments, decisions, and revisions thereto, and to act as the authorized representative of the town of Woodbridge.
I'll second.
Any additional discussion? All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you, Dale, thank you very much.
All right, have a good night.
Thank
Take
you.
care, guys. Bye.
The next item on the agenda is a town property use request for Pease Road parking. Off Center Farm is having a lavender festival on July 17th, I believe it is, Allison?
No, it's maybe July 17th, hold on, I gotta pull the calendar up again.
So did we have a document on this? I didn't see anything.
No,
No,
there
this
isn't,
isn't.
there isn't a,
And
there
I
isn't.
don't even know whether, well, never mind. But go on.
Right.
Go on, I'm sorry.
July 16th or it's a Friday night. Pull it up.
And I think it is the 17th, or 16th, I'm sorry.
Christina.
So, last time we were doing a request for property, did we go back and find that form that's online that's
12th.
apparently in the recreation
It's July
tab?
12th, I'm sorry, July 12th from 5 to 8 PM.
Yeah.
So there's an online form for, I
This
don't know if it
isn't, they're
covers
not
this.
using public property on this case. This was one where we weren't sure exactly what we had to do. I had it added to the agenda late yesterday, because that's when I realized that there was a request for it. That what they're really requesting is that they can use the parking lot at Pease Road, and people can cross that path that goes into the property there. They already have, as part of their lease, is the grass area that people park on. That's part of their lease as it stands, so obviously that is able to be used. The only thing that I feel at this point in time, just from a safety perspective, I've reached out to, or I haven't spoken to, but I will speak with Chief Capiello specifically to make sure that it goes in from 6 to 8, or 5 to 8 o'clock.
5 PM to 8 PM on July 12th.
So just to make sure we've checked with Recreation, there's no conflicts, there's nothing there, so that parking lot is there. They're looking to simply use that parking lot, which is a public parking lot. And we usually go dusk to dawn, so the only concern is whether or not dusk comes before 8 o'clock. And if there's cars there, they've already indicated. So it's more a matter of board being aware of it.
Right.
Felt that at the time that it came up, it's like, well, let me just check, run it through the board. And if we do need to take any action, we can take any action. But based on the details we found out since, I don't know that there's any action necessary on the part of the board.
So we're considering the parking lot is not part of the park, but it is.
Well, but it is,
Yeah.
but, right.
So they're using it for not a public event. They're not using town-owned property except for parking.
People will park at that. They're letting us know that if they get enough people, if they get an overflow amount of people, that those folks would likely or could potentially park in the parking lot at Pease
And
Road.
then walk
And then walk
across the town property into
Correct,
their
correct.
field. And that's all contemplated in the lease. The farming lease allows for that kind of use.
But that's not, well, they're not parking, yes, it doesn't specifically say they can't, but what they walk through is the land they're leasing. So the overflow is just to be used the Pease parking lot, and that the event isn't being held in the parking lot, so they don't have to request the use. That's where I got when talking to
Yeah,
her.
I know there had been previously discussion with the rec commission on, because there's an area that rec likes to park on that's actually part of the lease, and the question of who's.
Right.
And we would always, I think the lease actually says that rec has an option to park there.
It gives the town an opportunity to park
Right.
on the property that's there at the town, yes.
I'm just thinking, in general, when parks are being used, or when town-owned property is being used, you want to make sure that and I'm sure Chief Capiello can tell you whether they
Mhm.
need a police officer. It doesn't sound like they're going to have anywhere near that amount of parking, but that's usually part of that checkbox and
Right.
that form that we use. So I guess this is a novel use of just the parking lot.
Yeah, it's a little different, it's a different wrinkle, I agree with you in
Yeah,
terms
just to
of.
cover off our liability.
So we're still, Karen, I know, is still working on the overall process in terms of how we're going to move forward with publicly used public use property.
Wouldn't they normally contact Chief Capiello to find out if there needs to be police presence for crossing a road or whatever it is?
That's what the form says, basically, we've checked with the police department,
Yeah,
so
I
if
don't know
they
why
use
you
the form,
have to
they
do
would
that,
do
but I
it.
understand that you want to know.
So it was more they weren't sure what the process was because they're not using town
Okay.
property, people might park there and they felt like the town should know.
And the form
That-
is to hold an event on town property, which I think is part of like, so Karen, what Karen's working on is trying to be like, what are the different applications? Like, they're not all, this form doesn't apply to all the different ways we could use,
Right.
because what if
And
it's
people
putting a
certainly
sign out,
use-
you know?
People, homeowners on Center Road have used for overflow parking the choo-choo train
Right.
parking lot.
Correct.
And then ferried people back and forth, and I don't know that they've ever filled out forms, but
Right.
maybe that's something our attorney can help when we get to the,
I wouldn't want us to get into any liability situation. I mean,
problem, yeah.
if we're approving something which is kind of not really something that we have to do, does that imply then that we take on liability if somebody gets hurt crossing the road, hit by a car?
Nobody's crossing.
You know,
to the attorney
Nobody's
I
crossing
don't
the
know.
road.
So yeah, Nick, now that I think we'll just ask you, in this case, they're using the parking lot as the parking lot would normally be used, but reason people are parking there is because, it could be because they're having an event. It's up to the people to park there, you know what I mean? They're not suggesting it or signing it
I see, yeah.
or anything along those lines. So my sense is that whatever rules apply for people parking in one of our parks is the situation. But Nick, you wanna comment on that at all? Did you understand David's question?
I think so. And if I understand it correctly, the potential use of town property here is just what you said, Mika. It's overflow of parking if necessary, right?
Right.
It's not like an aspect of the Lavender Festival is actually occurring in our parking lot, so.
Correct.
So, yeah, I mean, where I've said in the past that where we are holding or authorizing an event to occur on town property, there probably should be some more specific insurance and indemnification type provisions that go along with that form. But here, if I understood what you just said correctly, Mika, I think you're right in that it's being used as a parking lot, which is our typical use anyway, and I don't know that we're assuming any additional liability. I mean, we're allowing the use of the property for reasonable parking purposes, not for some overextension of that for purposes of the festival. So, from a liability standpoint, I'm not overly concerned with this proposal.
So, Nick, does it matter that, so the part of the property, and I don't know where they're holding the festival itself, is town-owned property that's being leased for farming? Does that change any of your advice?
I mean, unless there's some, I haven't looked at the lease, so unless there's some specific provisions about what the property could be used for, but I have no knowledge of this lease that we're talking about.
We'll clarify where the event itself actually takes place for that specific reason. So we'll clarify what that is. The reason that I put it on there today was because the event is on the 12th, and our next meeting is on the 10th. So that was cutting it a little close if there was any questions
Sure.
or anything, and they can't really plan along those lines. So, but in discussing it and seeing that there doesn't appear to be, I certainly can by then and just confirm on the 12th that everything's okay. But
So we don't necessarily need to take
I
action
don't think we
tonight,
need
we're
to.
just,
correct.
so the check with the police and then the piece about the lease.
Yep, exactly right.
Yep,
All right.
sounds good.
All right. All good there? Last item is Lucy Street, the Warner Elderly Housing Update, and along those lines, if you recall, what we did is at one point in time, we had the company that was looking to get the lease, or the lease was being assigned to, was Alpha Capital. And Tyler Smith was here representing Alpha Capital, and at a few meetings ago, what we did is we gave our approval and or consent, if you will, to that assignment with contingent on checking with CHAFA. And in checking with Chaff and doing a considerable amount of checking, we did identify there were some concerns that were raised along the lines of the prospective leasor. And along those lines, and that includes the experience with affordable units, the experience with elderly units, the experience with just the whole process that goes along with that, and the resources that were available to that company as relates to working with affordable units and elderly units, and some concerns in regards to some of the activities of that particular company, et cetera. So in light of that, I reached out to all the parties involved, Chaffa, the current owner, Mr. Capone, and the prospective owner, Capital and Tyler Smith, and just indicated to them that for all intent and purposes, I felt it was important from a town perspective that we hold up on this, and it allowed us to do some more due diligence, some more findings, and from my perspective, to determine, are there other options that we should be looking at? In addition to that, we received a number of calls from the residents themselves, with some expressing some concern in terms of the rent increases, et cetera. I think it's fair that it's only fair to indicate that as far as the rent increases are concerned, that was being done by the current owner as well. So there was nothing being proposed that was above and beyond what the current owner was going to do anyway.
Yeah.
So that was not something that we necessarily could use as a gauge. It wasn't necessarily fair to use that as a gauge. But since then, I've identified other potentials. When we initially built the property, we actually went out to RFP to see what companies could do this in the way that it could be done. In talking to Chaffa, there are also some options for rehabilitation that goes beyond just doing the roof repairs and the fencing. So my sense was that I felt pretty strongly it would be important for us to consider an RFP process as opposed to moving forward with this. I'm not suggesting that we take action at this point in time. I'm providing this as an update to everyone in preparation for what. And by the next meeting, I feel we should have something that's resolved this to a point where I could put something a little bit more substantial in front of the board and ask the board to consider. And obviously, that'll be provided to you prior to the meetings. But I wanted to provide you an update. I don't know if you have heard anything more on this, but if there's any questions you have, I figured ask away.
When
Yeah.
is the original owner, or does this go back to when it was first built?
Correct. Yes.
And that's had one?
Yes. It's the father who signed the original lease, is my understanding. It's his son who's been carrying it out.
Okay.
But it's the same company that's had it for the entire time.
And that's a lease?
It is, well, we've given them a 60-year lease
Yeah.
for the property, correct. And I believe they had a significant mortgage, I believe it was like 40-year mortgage. I believe the mortgage comes up in 36 or something along those lines with Chaffa. And it is, the lease specifies that it's an elderly housing complex. Chaffa also went so far as to indicate that 20% of the units needed to be affordable, deeded as affordable, and there are 6 units. Part of the agreement that
Was that in the original?
that was in the original
Okay.
lease. That was in the original lease.
Yeah.
Now, as part of this whole transfer or assignment, and them working with Chaffa, they also had agreed to increase that to 10 units. One of the things, for example, I'm looking into right now is an opportunity to work this in such a way as all 30 units count toward our affordable housing stock. If the rates, they can increase market rates, however, to market rates if they want. They are under market rates right now, so they do qualify. But if that changes and that they no longer qualify, there is a means by which we can work this where there's dollars invested into the units beyond just what was proposed so far, and in doing so, they would count as stock toward our affordable number.
Yeah.
So, as I say, I feel an RFP would be an appropriate direction to go in here. I do feel that if we were to do that, by all means, we should include Alpha in that. And there are more discussions that I will be having with Alpha along these lines. But I've been trying to be as upfront with everyone involved as I can on this. So I wanted to make sure the board was aware of what was going on.
So I know we had some items in our packet back at, I think it was the April meeting, and that includes what was done. It was under Russell Stoddard when he was first selectman, so
Right.
late 80s, very early 90s. And I'm starting to think that I'd like to understand better what the Board of Selectmen's obligations and responsibilities are. Obviously, that was a long ago Board of Selectmen that obligated us into this. But is there more to this that we should understand? Because certainly, I really appreciate and I feel for the residents there who are worried about where they're gonna live and how they're gonna afford to live and what's gonna happen. So, to the extent that they're turning to us as the, representatives of the people of Woodbridge, and since we have that interest in the property itself, I wondered if we could maybe get some further background information, especially if we're gonna move forward into an RFP process. What are we looking for? Like, what do we need to, it's been a long time, and what are we looking to maintain or enhance? Ideally, I would think this is an opportunity, as you said, to increase the number of affordable apartments. So how much of that is in our court legally? What could we do at this point? And how much obligation do we take on in doing that? We have to kind of weigh all those things.
There is a lease, so the terms of the lease still exist, and we follow them. I'm not sure if that was included in any package, but certainly we can.
The original
It
lease
is.
Yeah,
was.
that's what
Yeah.
So that we need to maintain that. Part of that lease is.
Well, there are ways to break it too. I mean, not
For
that we're
costs.
contemplating that.
Yeah, for cause,
Right.
correct, there is. But this does afford us an opportunity to work with the existing owner to assure that our interests and those interests of the residents, which is one of the biggest factors from my perspective, is that they're met, that those are kept in mind, and that we do the best we can along those lines.
Right.
And that's exactly the reason for this hold and what we're doing right now, is to make sure that what we do is in the best interests of the residents and the town on a long-term basis. So, and it's not to say that the company that could take this over, that's not the case with them. I don't want to indicate that at all. It's just that there seem to be options that
Right.
we should at least consider. And I think it's my responsibility to make sure we do.
Yeah. And then I know it was mentioned when we talked about this previously, but even the assumption of the lease changing hands, does that go to a town meeting? Because it's a lease
No.
of more than $50,000
No, it's not.
and
The
more than
lease
1
is
year?
being assigned. There's no dollar value associated with it that's changing. So Nick, correct me if I'm wrong here. I know we've talked about this before, but did you?
Yeah, there's no difference in the fiscal impact here. So I don't think it triggers the town meeting obligation to approve. This isn't a new lease. This is assumption of all the same terms. I mean, nothing's changing in the lease unless we work with, I guess, in terms of the assignment itself, we have some discretion under this lease to negotiate terms of an assignment. For example, along the lines of what you're suggesting, Sheila, if there could be some potential for more affordable designated units, at least more that qualify under the state law that we keep talking about, 830G or otherwise, to just, lower the income brackets for some of the folks who are eligible. So, I mean, there is somewhat broad discretion here. The lease is worded pretty broadly. I mean, it doesn't expressly detail what the Board of Selectmen has to think about or consider in terms of consenting to this requested assignment, other than, like Mika said, CHAFA's consent is an obligation, which we know we don't have at this point. And we also need this assignment, how it actually happens, there's a document that looks kind of like a lease, but not really. It's much shorter, and it essentially says, okay, there was a lease that was executed in whenever it was, September of 1989, and under X article, assignment is permitted, subject to A, CHAFA approval, and B, and this actual assignment document that recites any terms that the board is going to condition its approval upon. So, and in compiling that document, there is necessarily some negotiation that, at the very least, can take place. So, so I mean, kind of 30,000-foot viewpoint here. That's, you know, how I've seen the lease and what our next steps could potentially be here.
So the RFP process, I don't know if you have a time frame in mind, or we're
No,
just
we
starting?
haven't, we haven't, right, we're just, at this point in time, we have enough information to determine that that might be a direction to go in, but we haven't identified specifically what that entails and what we're gonna do. And that's something that obviously we would let the board know. So this is, just, you know, as indicated, is more of an update at this point in time, so you understand, and there'll be more information disseminated, and at some point in time, we'll have to make a decision as to whether or not we want to release our approval, or we want to rescind the approval.
And if you don't mind reminding me that the current residents are, they meet certain requirements of age and income level. Is that what it is, or?
As far as the units that are deeded as affordable, yes.
The other units aren't, there are units that aren't deeded as affordable?
Yes,
as
there's
affordable
only
there?
6 units are currently deeded as affordable out of the 30 that exist.
Right.
So those 6 units are restricted, and they're restricted based on income.
And the other 24 have no income
Correct.
restriction?
Correct.
Okay.
Now,
But elderly. You do
but
have
the
to-
elderly
But
is
elder,
all,
but
they
they
all must
still
be
are all
elderly.
elderly.
Correct.
All elderly.
Correct. So yes, but right now, all of the units fall under the, under market enough to be classified as affordable. So, any other questions? Definitely will keep you updated. You'll receive more information on this, but, yeah, and it could happen as soon as our next meeting, but I'll keep you posted.
Great.
All right. With that, that's the last item on our agenda.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
So moved. We are adjourned.
5:48.
Good night, everyone.